read it. I've been putting off writing this for weeks because every time I sit down to type it out, I end up either laughing or crying, and sometimes both at the same time, which is apparently a skill I've developed over the past year and a half. I'm going to tell you a story about a woman who had a catchphrase, not a cute one, not an inspirational one. One of those phrases that sounds like it belongs on a $14 wine glass at HomeGoods, but was actually being used as a weapon. The phrase was, "You were his routine, I was his escape." She said it to me the first time across a restaurant table, like she was delivering the closing argument of a TED Talk. She said it in voicemails. She had it in her Instagram bio for a full 2 weeks. She probably said it to her houseplants. By the time everything was over, I had heard that sentence 11 times, and every single time I thought, okay, but how is the escape working out for you? Spoiler, not great. Let me back up. My name's Joanna. 3 years ago, I was 29, working as a project manager at a commercial real estate firm in Denver, and I had just started dating Reed Calloway. Reed was 38, a structural engineer who had quietly built a portfolio of commercial properties over the past decade without ever making noise about it, not flashy, not loud about money. The kind of man who drove a 7-year-old truck and owned 3 suits, 2 of which still had dry cleaning tags on them when I met him. We met at a mutual friend's dinner party. He was the guy standing in the corner looking mildly overwhelmed by the charcuterie board, like the arrangement of cured meats had personally offended him, and he was trying to figure out the right social response. I handed him a cracker. He said thank you. We talked for 4 hours. By the end of the night, he had my number, and I had a gut feeling that this was the kind of person you do not walk away from. For the first 2 years, it was the best relationship I'd ever been in. Reed wasn't a grand gesture man. He wasn't going to rent out a rooftop or hire a string quartet. What he did was remember things. He remembered that I hated cilantro, and that I always needed a second blanket, and that the week before my performance reviews, I became approximately 40% more anxious and needed someone to just sit quietly beside me while I internally catastrophized. He was consistent in a way that felt, at the time, almost predictable. I say almost predictable because I would later learn that consistent is actually a superpower, and I had been treating it like background noise. About 8 months before everything fell apart, Reed mentioned that he had reconnected with someone from college, a woman named Delia Voss. She had been a photography major, apparently. Now she ran a travel content account with around 280,000 followers, documented her life across boutique hotels and golden hour coastlines, and described herself in her bio as a seeker of authentic experiences and a believer in following where the heart leads. Her posts used phrases like releasing what no longer serves and the universe doesn't make mistakes. Her entire online presence was basically a fortune cookie that had taken a gap year in Bali. I looked her up. She was genuinely stunning, the kind of beautiful that is also clearly a full-time maintenance operation. Her aesthetic was flawless. Her captions were the kind of pretentious that only works if you're attractive enough to get away with it, and she was, so it did. Reed mentioned her casually. They'd grabbed coffee. They were catching up, old friends reconnecting. I didn't love it, but I also was not going to be the girlfriend who made a scene over a cup of coffee. I said nothing. I should have said something. 3 months later, Reed started being different. Not cruel, not cold, just slightly absent. The way a song playing in the next room sounds when you can almost but not quite make out the words. He was there, but the frequency had shifted. When I asked if something was wrong, he said work was stressful. I believed him because in 2 years, Reed had never once lied to me, and I was, it turns out, deeply naive. In February, I got a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. I think you deserve to know what's been happening. Delia." Now, when someone texts you, "I think you deserve to know what's been happening," what they actually mean is, I'm about to deliver information that benefits me while framing it as a generous gift to you. These people are everywhere. They all think they're the protagonist. They all order something they won't touch and arrive 12 minutes late. We met for lunch, against my better judgment. She was exactly as beautiful in person, and she ordered a green juice and did not touch it once in the 45 minutes we sat across from each other. I have since decided that ordering a drink and not touching it is a deeply revealing character trait, and I stand by that. She told me, with the composed energy of someone who had rehearsed this exact conversation multiple times in the mirror, that she and Reed had been seeing each other for the past 2 months, that it had started as emotional support, that it had progressed, that she wasn't going to apologize because she believed in honoring what is real. And then she settled back in her chair, tilted her head slightly, and said it for the first time. "You were his routine, Joanna. I was his escape." I stared at her. She nodded, clearly expecting me to have some kind of awakening. "Okay," I said. "And what does that mean exactly?" "It means," she said patiently, like she was explaining something to a slow child, "that what you and Reed had was comfortable, predictable, safe. He loved you like a habit. He loves me like oxygen." The untouched green juice sat on the table between us, silently judging everyone involved. I got up and left. I didn't slap her. Not that day. That day, I had enough self-control to walk out of the restaurant, sit in my car for 6 minutes, and then call Reed. Reed did not deny it. He said he had been confused. He said he was sorry. He said he needed time. I told him he could have all the time he needed, and that I was done. The slap came later. But we'll get to that. For everyone asking whether I had any warning signs before the February text, yes, in retrospect, I had several. I chose not to see them because Reed had always been trustworthy, and I extended that trust past the point where the evidence stopped supporting it. That's on me. I'm not excusing his behavior, but I'm also not pretending I had zero information. A lot of you are asking about the will. I know. Keep reading. It gets there. Okay, Reddit. I promised an update, and here it is. Buckle up, because things have escalated in ways that I, a relatively organized and pragmatic person, genuinely could not have predicted. After Reed and I ended things, I gave myself exactly 1 week to be devastated, and then I functioned. I went back to work. I kept my apartment. I reorganized my kitchen cabinets, which is apparently my version of processing grief. I did not, despite very strong temptation, check Delia's Instagram every 12 minutes. I checked it every 30. I'm human, and I never claimed otherwise. Delia, as it turned out, had also been busy. Within a week of our breakup, she had posted a series of Instagram stories about following your heart even when it's hard, and the universe doesn't make mistakes, and sometimes love asks you to be brave. Her engagement was through the roof. Her followers, bless every single one of them, were absolutely eating it up. Hundreds of comments saying things like, "You're so brave and real, love finds a way, and your energy is so pure." Meanwhile, Reed, who I heard about secondhand through our mutual friend Garrett, was not doing as well as Delia's Instagram suggested. Apparently, he had begun to discover that when the novelty of being someone's cosmic escape wears off, and you are left with the fact that this person is, in real life, a grown adult with logistical needs, moods, and a complete inability to make a decision about dinner without checking whether Mercury is in retrograde, the magic metabolizes fairly quickly. I know, truly shocking. The universe, with its infinite wisdom, had apparently not briefed anyone on this particular detail. About a month after our breakup, I ran into Reed at the hardware store. He was in the grout aisle looking like a man who had traded a good thing for a content calendar and was only now beginning to understand what he had done. I was in the lighting section buying replacement bulbs. It was the most boring possible setting for a moment that felt like a lot. He asked if we could talk. I said no. I said it kindly, but I said no. There are decisions people make that are not really about you, and Reed's decision had been one of those. He hadn't chosen Delia because of something broken in me. He had chosen her because of something unresolved in himself, some old restlessness he had not yet made peace with. Understanding that didn't make it hurt less, but it made it cleaner. He bought grout. I bought light bulbs. We went our separate ways. 2 weeks later, Delia reached out again. This time it was not a lunch table with an untouched green juice. This time she was at my apartment door at 7 on a Wednesday evening, mascara slightly compromised, the curated travel aesthetic temporarily suspended. She told me Reed had been pulling back, that he seemed distracted and distant, that she thought maybe I had said something to him. I had not said anything to him. She didn't believe me. She launched into a speech about how I was holding on to his energy and how my unresolved attachment was creating interference in the frequency of what she and Reed were building together. I want to be very precise about what was happening here. A woman who had walked into my relationship, delivered a speech about escapes and routines, and blown up 3 years of my life, was now standing at my door suggesting that my continued existence on this planet was the problem. The mental gymnastics involved deserve some kind of international recognition. I'm thinking a small trophy, or at minimum, a certificate of achievement. Delia, I said very calmly, I don't want Reed back. I want you to leave my apartment. She did not leave immediately. Instead, she looked me directly in the eyes and said, with renewed and apparently unshakable conviction, "You were his routine. I was his escape. That doesn't change just because you're having trouble accepting it." That's when I slapped her. Not hard. Not to cause injury. More of a punctuation mark on a sentence that had overstayed its welcome by about 45 seconds. She left. I will not say I'm proud of it. I will say my hand felt completely fine. She posted about it the next morning. No names. Someone chose violence today because they couldn't handle the truth. 100,000 impressions. A comment section that ranged from "Queen stay strong" to "Are you okay?" and approximately 12 people who seemed to suspect there was more context than she was providing. I did not respond publicly. I did, however, do 2 things. First, I filed a report with the local police documenting the interaction from my side, including the fact that she had appeared at my home uninvited. Second, I had a brief consultation with a family law attorney in my building about my options if this continued to escalate. Both of these actions are unglamorous, undramatic, and completely effective, which is why nobody ever posts about them on social media. And then Reed called me. And everything changed shape. He told me he had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of lymphoma 6 weeks earlier. That he had been in the early stages of treatment during the final months of our relationship. That he hadn't told me because he didn't know how, because he was frightened, because he was making a series of decisions from a place of fear that he had not yet named as fear. That Delia knew, that she had, in fact, been one of the first people he told. I sat down on my kitchen floor and did not move for about 10 minutes, not because I wanted him back, because he was a good man who had made a series of bad choices during one of the most frightened periods of his life. And I understood that in a way that was simultaneously painful and clarifying. He wasn't a villain. He was a scared person who had reached for something that felt like aliveness when his own felt threatened. That didn't make what he did okay, it just made it comprehensible. Before we got off the phone, he told me one more thing. He had updated his will. He said I should know that. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. But I thought about it. I thought about it for weeks. I know a lot of you want me to say I got back together with him. I didn't. I'm going to ask you to respect that that was the right decision for me without needing to fully explain why. Some chapters close, and the closure is its own kind of care. I debated posting this update at all. But enough of you have followed this story and been kind enough to share your own experiences in the comments that it felt wrong to go quiet now. Reed passed away 11 days ago. I'm going to let that sit for a moment because there is no smooth way to write out of that sentence. He was 39 years old. He spent the last 3 months of his life continuing to go to work when he was able, calling his mother every Sunday without fail, and, according to Garrett, who visited regularly, sitting in his backyard at night, looking at the sky in a way that didn't invite questions. He died in hospice care with his mother and his younger brother Donovan at his side. Delia was not present. She had, from what Garrett told me, spent the final weeks of Reed's life cycling through a progression of escalating conversations about their future, a concept that was, under the circumstances, doing quite a lot of work for a word. She had also made multiple attempts to be added to his financial accounts, an effort that his estate attorney had quietly and professionally declined on each occasion. A woman whose entire documented philosophy centers on releasing control and letting the universe lead had apparently decided that this particular situation called for a great deal of attempted control. The universe, interestingly, did not seem to be cooperating. I am going to try to write this next part without cruelty. I want to be clear that I don't feel victorious. I feel the way you feel when something inevitable finally becomes visible. Not satisfied, not vindicated, just very tired and very sad. Delia is pregnant. She announced it publicly, 4 days after Reed died, in a post that read, "Carrying forward the love that changed my life." She included a photo of herself at what appeared to be about 14 weeks, holding a small pair of shoes, looking beautifully, artfully devastated. The comments were divided in every direction. Some people were deeply moved. Some were horrified. Some sensed that the timing and framing were doing a very specific kind of work. Her PR instincts, I will give her this, were impeccable even in grief. What her PR instincts had apparently not accounted for was the will. Reed had updated his estate documents approximately 3 months before his death, during the window between his diagnosis and the deterioration of his health. He had worked methodically with an estate attorney. This was, again, exactly like Reed, thorough and quiet and without announcement. The revised will was specific. It created a trust for his unborn child. Reed's primary property and a substantial portion of his investment portfolio were held in trust for that child to be distributed at age 25, administered by his brother Donovan as trustee. Delia received nothing, not because Reed was cruel, not because he was punishing her, because the will was precise. The beneficiary was his child, not the child's mother, not a girlfriend, not a partner. A child who had not yet been born and whom Reed had decided to protect with the same quiet completeness with which he had done everything else in his life. I heard the details from Garrett, who had been one of Reed's closest friends and had been present for several of the estate conversations. He told me Reed had spent a long time thinking about it, that he had wanted the child genuinely cared for, regardless of whatever happened to the people in the child's orbit, that he had thought about who that child would be and what that child would need, and had tried to answer that question clearly and without noise. It was, honestly, the most Reed thing I had ever heard. Delia, per Garrett's second-hand account of the attorney's office, did not take this calmly. The phrase, "I was everything to him," was apparently used at considerable volume. The attorney, maintaining the serene professionalism of someone who has seen all of this before and will see all of it again, indicated that the document was not ambiguous. There were, I understand, subsequent consultations about contesting the will. Those consultations reached the same conclusion they generally reach when a will is properly executed by a competent adult. The document stands. She posted about it, of course. Not the specific details, but a story that said, "Some people try to control love even from the other side." Her engagement was lower than usual. Even her most loyal commenters seemed to feel, without being able to articulate why, that something had shifted in the narrative. The escape brand was fraying at the edges. Here's the part I keep coming back to. For a year and a half, Delia had built an entire identity on being Reed's revelation, his oxygen, the love that woke him up. She had said 11 times across lunch tables and apartment doorways and voicemails and Instagram stories that I was the routine and she was the escape, as though that were a hierarchy and she were at the top of it. And Reed, in the quiet and deliberate way he did everything that actually mattered, had looked at all of that and then looked at a blank legal document and written down the only name he needed to write, his child's, not Delia's, not mine, for what it's worth. And I want to be clear that I expected nothing and was given nothing and feel entirely at peace with both of those facts. The difference between Delia and me is not that I was wronged and she wasn't. The difference is that I already knew where I stood. I had accepted what Reed and I were and what we had become and what we were not going to be. Delia had built her whole self-concept on being irreplaceable, and she had discovered, in the most concrete and legally binding way possible, that she was not. The escape, as it turns out, had terms and conditions, and nobody had handed her the document. For the many people asking, yes, the child will be provided for. Whatever I think about Delia, I genuinely hope that child grows up well. Reed wanted that. I want that. That's not complicated. It has been about 2 months since the will was read. I said I would wrap this up when I had something worth saying, and I think I'm there. Delia has gone quiet. Her last post was 3 weeks ago. A landscape photograph with no caption, no philosophy, no catchphrase, no mention of escapes or routines or the universe's design. Just a picture of a body of water at dusk that didn't say anything. Her engagement is down. The travel content has stopped, which tracks because maintaining an aesthetic of boundless freedom while pregnant, grieving, and in consultation about a will contest is logistically demanding in ways that don't photograph well. I don't know what she will do from here. I hope, and I mean this without performance, that she figures it out. The child is coming regardless of everything else, and that child deserves a mother who has done at least some of the work of understanding how she arrived where she is. As for Reed's family, Donovan has been in contact with Delia's attorney about the trust administration. The child will be cared for. Reed made sure of that, and Donovan is honoring it, which is also exactly like Reed, who had excellent taste in the people he trusted with important things. As for me, I'm doing better than I expected, which is the only honest thing I can say. I cried at Reed's service. I cried for the relationship and for the man and for the version of our future that had quietly closed without ceremony. And then I came home and ate an entirely unreasonable amount of crackers and watched something completely mindless on television and went to sleep and woke up and went back to work. Which is the unglamorous reality of how most things end. Not with a revelation, not with a cosmic signal, just with a Tuesday. There is a guy at my office named Fletcher. He has been, over the past few months, inserting himself into my life in the specific way that good people do. Not loudly, not with declarations, just with small, consistent evidence that he pays attention. He recommended a book I actually liked. He brought back the right kind of coffee from a work trip without being asked. He remembered, without being told twice, that I can't eat cilantro. I have not done anything about it yet. I'm not in a hurry, but I notice it, and noticing feels like enough for right now. The last time I thought about Delia's catchphrase, I was standing in a coffee line listening to someone ahead of me on the phone say, in that particular tone of a person losing an argument they started, "No, but I need you to understand where I'm coming from." And something clicked into place. You were his routine. I was his escape. 11 times she said that to me as though it were a verdict, as though routine were an insult and escape were a crown. As though a man choosing consistency, choosing the kind of love that shows up every day without theater, without an algorithm, without a caption, was evidence of settling rather than wisdom. She wanted to be the oxygen. But oxygen, it turns out, is actually the routine. It is the thing that is there every moment, not just the moments that look good from certain angles, the dramatic escapes, the revelations, the love that wakes you up. Those are the occasions. The oxygen is the everything in between, the quiet, the consistency, the cracker handed to a man overwhelmed by a charcuterie board at a dinner party. Reed knew that. I think he had always known it. It just took him a terrible and costly season of forgetting before he could find his way back to what he understood. I'm not his story anymore. I get to have my own. And it is going to be fine.